A moment of significant change or a turning point, altering your course, is known as an inflection point. In business, these moments have a significant impact in many ways. That's why we're speaking with leaders from across the asset management industry to hear the stories of their inflection points and the impact they've had on their journeys. Join me and my colleague Mark Spina as we explore the business of being in business, with insights that can help you wherever you may find yourself. This is Inflection Points.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Spina, President and COO here at Flex Networks. I am also the co-host of Inflection Points. Today, I'm joined by Julie Zhang. Julie is the Director of GTM Enablement at Panther. For those of you unfamiliar with Panther, Panther's tagline, if you will, is security operations made painless. Panther aims to deliver the power to detect any breach anywhere for security teams everywhere. I think that's awesome, by the way, Julie. Cool.
Thank you. I came up with that. No, I'm kidding. I had nothing to do with that.
Somebody did. It's whoever did deserves credit. Panther is leading the evolution of security operations, helping security teams overcome the challenges of detection and response at scale with a platform built by security practitioners for security practitioners. Kind of like that too. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. We're trying.
All right. So Julie's been in wealth, asset, and technology space for almost 15 years now. Julie, is that about right?
And yet I still feel like I'm 20. So yeah, 15 years. Yeah.
Awesome. I've had an opportunity. Julie and I worked together a few years ago for a few years. Mm-hmm. I was uniformly impressed with her energy, her innovation, and her execution skills, kind of a rare combination on all of those fronts. She's been connecting and working across business functions to increase their productivity and readiness for both sales teams and customer access points. Julie believes in cultivating a culture and organization that is made up of hungry, happy, and humble people. Love that, Julie. Mm-hmm. You'll have an opportunity to elaborate more kind of functionally. Julie's a sales enablement focused sales operations leader working across these business functions to increase sales productivity and sales readiness in an effort to maximize the client experience and the bottom line. Finally, importantly, Julie believes work should be fun. What did I miss, Julie?
I think you got it all. I feel like we just threw out a lot of terminology, and hopefully we can make a little bit of sense of it. Yeah, but that's essentially me in a nutshell on a professional level.
That's an awesome segue, right? We're going to get to Julie at the professional level, but let's get to Julie at the pre-professional level first. Right? So what were some of the formative, what we refer to, Julie, on the podcast as inflection points? Did you have particular friends, families, schooling, activities, or adventures that either inspired you in a direction that you've taken to date, or maybe redirected you away from early ideas of professional pursuits?
An interesting question, because I actually don't know how much of my personal experience has caused me or is a reason for why I tend to be a jack of all trades at what I do at a professional level. And I say that because I'm an immigrant from China, born and raised in Beijing. And then we immigrated to Eastern Canada, to New Brunswick when I was very young. And then we moved to Ottawa. Then I spent some formative years in Colorado Springs and moved back to Montreal, Canada for university at McGill. Then moved to Vancouver, Canada for a few years, back to Montreal, then to Seattle for the last 5 years. And so moved around a lot as a kid and, trying to chase that American dream. So I feel like when you move quickly, if you think about the definition of achieving an American dream is really to, from one generation to the next, skip multiple levels of the socioeconomic ladder. So when you think about achieving that, it makes you really respect and understand everyone's perspective, no matter where they come from. So there is beauty in the American dream, no matter what, although a lot of people are saying it's called the Canadian dream now, because I did most of it in Canada. So I'm very grateful for that country. But I would say that it gives you a a little bit of an impatience, because there is a little bit of like, hey, I did this, like, you can do this too. But it allows me to relate to people a lot easier. And I would say that moving around a lot and having those experiences and formative experiences as a child and into adulthood, I also had the privilege of learning multiple languages. So I speak Mandarin and conversationally in French, and I'm getting really good at English. So one day, but the three languages multiple languages connect you very easily to people. There's always something you can relate to, and no matter where you travel to, you tend to pick up languages a little bit easier. So I feel like the focus on just having a lot of varied experiences at a young age and being exposed to multiple languages has certainly helped me navigate life, and I would say acclimate to new situations and adapt quickly.
No doubt. As a witness to part of that, I say witness, Julie, I can see the connection between your impatience and your drive. But I take that in a complimentary way. We talk a lot here about strengths and weaknesses, if you will, being in close proximity to one another. So if you were to categorize impatience as a weakness, like the corresponding strength is the drive and having the perspective that you just brought to us in terms of this American and Canadian dream combined together really helps understand, what's brought you, what's driven you, what's brought you into this space, what's driven you to throughout your career. It's super cool. Expand on the language thing a bit, though. Tell us more about how you think that's. I think it's likely intuitive and somewhat obvious, but give us a couple of examples of how that's played out.
I think actually for me, it's played out the most that you're able to get accents faster, for me at least. So if I'm speaking, if we go to travel to Japan, I can pick up a couple of phrases and I can usually say them in a way that locals say them. So you sound naturally like you fit. And there's an aspect of of respect that gets reciprocated. They're like, oh, you really tried to speak the language. You're really trying to communicate. And I have a love for languages in general. So I think that it just makes it a little bit easier to pick up, and nothing engages people unless you speak their same language, both figuratively and literally. I think Trevor Noah actually talks about this a lot. I think he knows like 23 dialects in Africa, and it allows him to connect with people, even if they have very different values. Immediately, they associate the common language, the common accent to home and to the way they grew up. So if you can replicate that and reflect that when you're talking to someone, they're able to find a similarity and a connection with you. Isn't that what humanity is all about? Finding connection with people as quickly as possible.
Totally agree. And I think it's interesting that someone who is data driven, insight driven, that you're anchoring though to more personality driven, language driven, accent driven as a way to connect. So have you thought about kind of the let's do it here.
It's very introspective all of a sudden. I like it.
We're breaking new ground here with Julie. So how do you in the work setting, I guess, then bring together those personal inferences along with data inferences? I think there's got to be some of that going on.
There's a lot, and in your introduction, right now my current role at Panther is director of go-to-market enablement and operations, and so you're absolutely right. There's on the operations side, it's very much data-driven analytics, making data work to help you make decisions in the future, and very process systematic oriented. And then you have the enablement function, which is coaching and training and much more personal. And you really have to understand how people tick and their incentives and what will drive you to learn and what impassions you to learn and be curious. So there are two very different mindsets, but I guess it's mirrored in the description that you gave of me, which is that I want to work hard. I want people around me to work hard, but I also want to have fun. Like, it should not be mutually exclusive. If anything, one definitely helps the other. So if you spend the energy and effort to build a great culture around your team and around work in general, then all it can do is lead to more productivity, not less.
I totally agree.
Yeah, we had fun together, right?
We had some absolutely, absolutely. Let's use that as another cue here, June. Let's move into the professional realm. We've started to talk about it already. What were some of, if you think back, what were some of the precursor inflection points in a professional setting that you've experienced over the years? You know, whether that's colleagues, mentors, training. I know you're a big believer in professional development. You're you're a master networker, and any particular. I've had people talk about super interesting, super in some ways elementary and interesting roles, jobs that they had that inspired them very early on in their professional life, to ascend to very high levels.
I think I spent so much time worrying about getting there and getting to the next level and fighting for the next level. It wasn't, this is not to give you too much of an ego mark, but it wasn't actually until
I am
you.
egoless, Julie.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
It wasn't until you recognized something in myself that I didn't. So you had picked me out of the role that I was in our previous company and selected me to head enablement for North America. And at the time, enablement was a completely new concept to me. It was relatively nascent in the financial services world. And it was the first time that someone above me had recognized something in myself that I hadn't, and I didn't have to fight for it. I didn't have to beg for it. I didn't have to build 100 business cases around it. I didn't have to convince it. It just happened. And sometimes it made me realize that sometimes what someone really needs to succeed is someone else who believes in them more than they might believe in themselves in that moment. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but there was like a moment, a month after you gave me that position, and it was a hard first month of transition. And you asked me, you're like, how's it going? How's the new role?
You're making me worry here that this is suspenseful, Julie, but I'm thinking it's going to come.
There was like a long pause, and I looked at you and I said, one day I'm going to thank you for putting me in a challenging role that I never even knew about. Today is not that day because it's still really hard. But then you said, I give you every permission to make mistakes. And that really helped because I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to try. And I think we've talked about this before, but I was incredibly appreciative of you giving me that opportunity because it allowed me to be a bit more confident and to just kind of recognize my value and know that I don't have to always prove it. I know how good I am, and you can either take it or leave it. So that was a big point for me.
That was unplanned, much appreciated. You more than kind of repaid that risk, though, Julie. You were everything I said in the beginning. I saw it firsthand, and I've seen you bring it to life. I also think, though, that for both of us now, we believe in providing people with a chance to expand into roles. Absolutely. And understanding that when you provide that chance, though, you have to have an expectation that there's going to be missteps, that there's going to be issues, and people talk about permission to fail, and then they that's a tagline. You have to really believe that, embrace that, allow people to make small mistakes so that they can have large successes. And I think you did an amazing job with that. Anybody or anything else that you can think of as being particularly influential, let's just say, as you've developed? And maybe I want to press you a bit. Anything from a training perspective that you've done or that you advocate for today? I know you've gone for your EMBA, it could be from that space, or it could be anything.
I think that doing the EMBA, I would say, first of all, it was a village of people that allowed me to be at the point that I am today. And you were certainly among that. The EMBA and just the network, I never really thought of myself as a really good person of building networks. I just like building relationships. So I guess that is essentially it. But doing an EMBA at University of Washington and building a network outside of the sphere of asset management in Seattle, which is a little bit easier because Seattle is such a tech heavy city. That helped a lot because it opened my eyes up to a world outside of finance. And I never thought I would actually leave. But last year I did indeed leave, and I jumped into the tech world. And I have no experience in cybersecurity or security engineering background, but I desperately wanted to try something new. And I talked to everybody. I mean, everybody. You want to know like who were influential? I would say there are so many people from our last company that we were in together to like a lot of my peers from my executive MBA who worked at Amazon, Microsoft, Salesforce, you name it. I talked to every single person I could.
Right.
Trying to extract out, a lot of it was to allay my own fears. Can I do this? Is it the right time? Are my skills transferable? Am I going to get paid? What's the risk? Can I do a startup? And et cetera, et cetera. So I am definitely one for getting as much advice and information from people as possible and building out a huge network so that I can make the best decision going forward. And so all of those conversations and experiences and just the absolute generosity that people have with their time to help you and to just talk you through a major career change and a major shift in your life by moving industries and moving into a startup, it was profoundly helpful. And so I'm really grateful to the network that I built.
That's super cool. And it bridges to the next question that I want to ask you. You've somewhat addressed it. I'll give you an opportunity, though, to take it further if you want. So what the network did, the education did, what ultimately, though, gave you the courage to move from your former role in a space you knew and had grown comfortable with to make that move? You talked to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. At some point you had to say, I'm going to do this. What was that inflection point? I'm trying to drill into the specific.
It's going to sound very cheesy. The actual inflection point was having a kid.
Doesn't sound.
It's absolutely life-changing, but not in the way that people prepared me for or people said that it would be. Like, yeah, your perspectives are different. I mean, your priorities shift. Like, you can't go out every night. Like, that's obvious. But I actually thought after having a kid that I would be more patient. You have someone you're taking care of, that you would like allow for time to pass before you have certain expectations. And I think I have certainly patience for my son, but I had even less patience, believe it or not, Mark, for anyone else or anything else that I felt like was a waste of time. And so leaving him in the care of another caregiver and going to work where I didn't find the work challenging enough, satisfying enough, impactful enough for 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week was just absolute BS to me. It was a point where, and I thought like I would come back from maternity leave, I would like do another year, figure it out. But within months, I realized that I could not in good conscience be away from my son for that long, knowing that I could never be a stay-at-home mom, by the way, because I don't know how those people do it. That's an amazing job that I could never do. But I knew I could never be away from my son for that long, that many days in a row, and still be unsatisfied. So I knew I needed to make a change. I need to make it fast. So I drastically sped up my decision-making process after that point.
That is the least cheesy, very authentic, maybe most authentic response we've received to date on that. So I appreciate you sharing that with me and the audience, Julie. Let's round this out, the conversation here. Let's go back outside of work. I think you've got ongoing sources of inspiration outside of work that may energize you for your role and for life in general. What are some of the things that you do outside of work that you think could propel you to future inflection points?
Yeah, I mean, having now had a taste of the startup world, you have a little bit of an addiction to wanting to explore new ideas on a constant basis. So
I agree with that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you want to brainstorm about like, oh, what about this challenge? How would you solve for this problem? Like my husband and I talk about all this all the time, like just problems that we see and efficiencies in the world that we're like, oh, that would be a really cool idea to solve for. And so I'm having a lot of those very interesting conversations with older colleagues, with past acquaintances, just exploring what it would be like to start something on the side or start something with them individually. So you definitely have that motivation that I probably wouldn't have an appetite for risk like that before joining Panther, but now definitely having want more than just a taste of it. I would say there is something incredibly inspirational, like the Panther CEO Jack, like when he talks about the company he founded and created, there is something really beautiful, if I can say that. Yeah. Watching him light up and talk about the people that he's brought together, the jobs that he's created, the way that he's solving for an actual challenge in the world, it's very inspiring, and you kind of want to get in on that.
I totally agree. So when you move from a corporate environment to an entrepreneurial environment, what I've seen for myself and for others is that you almost have to get used to operating in an unconstrained way, right? There's fewer divisions, there's fewer functional divides, there's fewer to no caps on what you can do, the idea generation that you can bring to the firm. And at first it feels like
terrifying.
Yeah, should I be doing this? Is this can I do it? And then once you do it, it's I want to do more of this. And I think that's
freeing.
Right?
Yeah, actually, he asked me a question today. He said, "What's your life motto?" And it was very off the cuff, and I said LFG, which stands for Let's Effing Go, and because I definitely sway more to action than inaction. But that kind of is like there's that spirit in the entrepreneurship world where you're just like, let's go, let's do it, let's be excited, let's make a mistake, but not the same mistake twice kind of spirit.
So as we go through these episodes, I'm always listening for key lines and insights that could be the show titles. And I think we might have just we're looking for some more edgy content, Julie. I didn't know we were going to get it today. Much appreciation. So I'm going to wrap it here. I want to give a big thank you to Julie. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Mark.
And to our listeners for your time. You've allowed us to occupy and potentially enhance your mind space. We think that both of those things are valuable. We also think that we are a work in progress as people on a podcast. I think Julie, as I said, was a super authentic representation of that. If you picked up anything of interest, please subscribe, leave a rating and review. And until next time, keep looking for and creating your own inflection points. Thank you again, Julie.
Thanks for having me.
The information contained in this recording is provided as is for educational and informational purposes only and should not serve as the basis for any trading or investing decisions. Flex Networks makes no representations and disclaims all express, implied, and statutory warranties of any kind to any viewer, listener, or other third party. Neither Flex Networks nor any of its affiliates make any endorsement of any particular company, security, product, or financial strategy, and nothing contained in this recording should be construed as investment advice. Investors should undertake their own due diligence and carefully evaluate companies before investing.